Ever feel like, you're building your life on shaky ground?
Mm.
Like one good earthquake could just send it all crumbling down?
Oh.
Today,
Yeah.
we're going deep on how to create like an unshakable foundation for your life.
Right.
And get this.
Yeah.
The blueprint comes from like an unlikely source.
Okay.
Temples.
Interesting.
We're going to be diving into a talk by President Russell M. Nelson called The Temple and Your Spiritual Foundation. It's from the October 2021 General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
This is a fascinating talk.
Yeah.
President Nelson really masterfully blends the tangible and spiritual in this one.
He does. He starts by painting this picture of the Salt Lake Temple,
All right.
undergoing a massive renovation, Imagine him and his wife down in the foundation,
Oh, wow.
marveling at the original stonework. But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
He connects this to our spiritual foundations.
I see. Yeah, that's a brilliant analogy. The temple needed earthquake reinforcement to withstand all those external forces.
Yeah.
And President Nelson suggests we need the same kind of reinforcement for our spiritual lives.
He even uses the word vulnerable
Okay.
to describe the temple's foundation, before the upgrades.
Yeah.
What does that even mean in a spiritual sense? What makes us vulnerable?
It's all about the pressures of modern life,
Right.
The unprecedented times and forthcoming perils he mentions. The kind of stuff that can make us feel unsteady, uncertain, even a little afraid. Yeah.
Okay, now it's getting really real.
Yeah.
He's not sugarcoating it. The world can throw some serious curveballs.
It can. It can.
Oh.
And that's why he urges us to build our foundation on something solid, on the rock of our Redeemer, Jesus Christ, as he puts it.
I'm starting to see where this is going. We need something strong to hold on to when things get tough.
Yeah.
And then he asks this pointed question.
Okay.
How firm is your foundation?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That hits close to home. So how do we even begin to assess that? Where do we look?
Well, President Nelson points us directly to the temple.
Okay.
He emphasizes that the temple is the center of strengthening our faith.
Right.
Because it's all about Jesus Christ and his teachings.
Okay.
It's like a spiritual gym for building resilience.
He even shares that story about Joseph Smith dedicating the Kirtland Temple and receiving the keys of sealing authority from Elijah.
Right.
Now, that's a bit of history I could use a refresher on.
Yeah.
What exactly is sealing authority, and why is it such a big deal?
Great question.
Yep.
Sealing authority is essentially the power to bind families together for eternity.
Okay.
It's what makes temple marriages and family relationships last forever,
Wow.
even after this life. Pretty amazing, right?
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
That puts things into perspective.
Right.
And President Nelson emphasizes that these ordinances and covenants we make in the temple
Yeah.
aren't new. They go all the way back to Adam and Eve. It's like we're part of this continuous chain of believers
Yes.
throughout history, making the same promises to God.
Exactly. But here's something even more fascinating.
Okay.
President Nelson points out that while the core principles of temple ordinances are eternal,
Right.
the way we perform them has actually evolved over time.
Oh, I love a good evolution story.
Yeah.
Give me an example. What's changed?
Think about the sacrament. In the early days of the church, the water was shared from one large vessel.
Oh, okay.
Now we use individual disposable cups for sanitation and safety.
Interesting. So the procedure changed,
Right.
but the meaning, the sacred promise we make,
Yeah,
remain the same.
precisely. And that's a perfect illustration of three key truths President Nelson highlights. First, the restoration is an ongoing process, not just a one-time event.
Okay.
Second, the ultimate goal is to bring temple blessings to all of God's children.
Got it.
And third, God continues to reveal insights and guidance to help us do that more effectively.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's break those down. What does it mean that the restoration is a process? Doesn't it feel pretty complete?
Think of it like this. The restoration is about continuously receiving light and knowledge from God. We're always learning, always growing. And the Lord is constantly revealing more truth and guidance. It's not a static thing. It's dynamic and unfolding.
So it's like a constantly evolving understanding of God's plan.
Yeah.
What about bringing temple blessings to everyone? How is that even possible?
Well, remember, the temple is for all of God's children.
Right.
As we strive to make those blessings more accessible and understandable to everyone,
Yeah.
regardless of background or circumstance, God provides new ways to accomplish that. It's about continual progress and inclusion.
And that brings us to this incredible statement that really struck me. He is the one who wants you to understand with great clarity exactly what you are making covenants to do. Something about that feels intensely personal.
I completely agree. That statement emphasizes the personal nature of our relationship with God.
Right.
He wants us to understand. He wants us to be fully engaged in these covenants we're making.
Right.
He's not trying to trick us or keep us in the dark.
It's like he's right there with us, guiding us through every step. Now, what about those who can't physically get to the temple on a regular basis? What does President Nelson say about that?
He addresses that directly.
Okay.
President Nelson encourages us to, rehearse in our minds the covenants we have made. Even if we can't physically be in the temple, we can keep those promises
Right.
at the forefront of our thoughts. It's
Yeah.
like a mental workout for our spiritual muscles.
I love that mental rehearsal.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that? Life gets so busy, it's easy to let things slip our minds.
Yeah.
How do we make sure those covenants stay top of mind when we're, like, out in the real world?
It's about intentionally weaving those principles into our everyday lives. Imagine creating like a personal mantra
Okay.
based on your covenants. For
Yeah.
example, if you covenanted to be more charitable,
Yeah.
your mantra might be, look for opportunities to serve today.
Right.
Repeat it throughout the day. Simple but powerful way to keep those commitments
Right.
front and center.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Little reminders throughout the day.
Yeah.
But what about people who might be struggling to connect with the temple?
Mhm.
Maybe they feel obligated to go, but it doesn't feel like joyful
Right.
or meaningful.
Right.
What advice does President Nelson give for those folks?
He gives some pretty counterintuitive advice, he says.
Okay.
If you don't yet love to attend the temple, go more often, not less.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Go more if you don't love it. That seems backwards.
It might seem that way at first,
Yeah.
but think of it like trying a new food. The more you taste it, the more your palate adjusts, and you might discover you actually enjoy it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see what you mean. It's about, like, giving it a chance,
Right.
letting ourselves adjust to the experience.
Exactly. And that's especially true for the temple. You immerse yourself in the sacred atmosphere.
Yeah.
You allow yourself to feel the peace and the spirit there, the more likely you are to develop a deeper connection.
So the temple becomes less about obligation and more about refuge.
Yeah. Yeah.
President Nelson compares it to an earthquake-proof building, right?
Yeah.
Our safe haven in a world that can feel pretty shaky sometimes.
Exactly. And that leads to a really crucial question.
Okay.
How do we shift from feeling obligated to feeling genuinely drawn to the temple?
Right.
How do we make it a place we want to be?
That's the million-dollar question. What's the secret sauce?
President Nelson encourages us to approach the temple with a heart of humility
Right.
and a desire to learn. He says to bring a contrite heart and a seeking mind to the Lord's house.
Okay.
It's not about checking boxes.
Yeah.
It's about being open to receiving revelation and allowing the Spirit to guide our learning.
It's about remembering that it's a personal journey, right?
Yeah.
We all connect with the temple in different ways.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Absolutely. We need to let go of comparisons and just focus on our own experience, allowing ourselves to learn and grow at our own pace.
Right.
It's about nurturing our individual connection with the divine.
And speaking of learning,
Yeah.
he also stresses the importance of truly understanding the covenants we're making.
Right. He says he is the one who wants you to understand with great clarity exactly what you are making covenants to do. That line always gets me. It's like God is personally invested in our spiritual growth
Right.
and understanding. He doesn't want us blindly stumbling
Yeah.
through these sacred promises.
It's not just about going through the motions. It's about comprehending the weight
Yeah.
and the beauty of what we're committing to.
Precisely. And President Nelson emphasizes that God wants us to experience the fullness of his blessings, which comes through truly understanding
Right.
and keeping our covenants. We have to meet him halfway, We have to be active participants in this relationship.
It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
We commit to him.
Right.
And she promises to bless us. But it requires effort on our part.
Yeah.
What does he suggest we do to gain that deeper understanding? Where do we even begin?
He encourages us to regularly ponder and study the scriptures, to really wrestle with the meaning and application of the principles.
Yeah.
We're learning.
Okay.
He also encourages us to attend church meetings, participate in discussions, and ask questions. And of course, prayer is essential.
Right.
It's about opening ourselves to revelation and guidance.
So it's about integrating these temple principles into our everyday lives, not just leaving them at the temple doors.
Exactly. Making those covenants a part of who we are, not just something we do on a special occasion. And President Nelson even suggests We mentally revisit the temple when we can't be there physically.
Right, that mental rehearsal idea.
Yeah.
But how do we make that happen? I mean, life is distracting.
Yeah.
How do we make sure those covenants stay top of mind in the busyness of everyday life?
I found it helpful to intentionally incorporate them into my daily routine.
Okay.
It could be as simple as taking a few minutes each morning
Yeah.
to quietly reflect on your covenants. Visualize yourself in the temple, making those promises. Think about what those covenants mean to you and how you can live them out more fully today.
So it's like a mini spiritual meditation,
Exactly.
creating a moment of stillness amidst the chaos to connect
Yeah.
with those sacred commitments.
Exactly. And that practice can be incredibly powerful in helping us stay anchored to those covenants, even amidst
Right.
the hustle and bustle of life.
Right. It's about keeping that connection alive.
Exactly.
That brings us back to those unprecedented times
Yeah.
and forthcoming perils President Nelson talks about.
Yeah.
With all the craziness happening in the world.
Right.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, but he suggests our covenants can help us navigate those storms, right?
He does. He says that our covenants become our anchor,
Uh-huh.
our guiding light, our source of unwavering hope.
Right.
When everything else feels uncertain,
Yeah.
those promises we've made become our steadying force.
So even when life throws those inevitable curveballs, our covenants can help us
Right.
stay centered and grounded.
Precisely. And that brings us to another crucial aspect of temple covenants
Yeah.
that we haven't touched on yet. The power of sealing families.
Oh, yes, sealing. President Nelson gets pretty passionate
He does.
about the importance of families being sealed in the temple.
Yeah.
Why is that so central to his message?
It all goes back to that sealing authority that was restored to Joseph Smith in the Kirtland Temple.
Right.
That's the power to bind families together forever,
Right.
not just for this life,
Yeah.
for eternity.
So it's not just about earthly relationships. It's
Mhm.
about extending those bonds into the eternities.
Exactly. And President Nelson emphasizes that this is a vital part of God's plan
Oh.
for our eternal happiness. He calls being sealed as families the crowning, life-changing ordinance.
Wow, that's powerful.
Oh.
And he has specific messages for different groups of people, right?
Mhm.
What does he say to young adults who are looking towards marriage?
He pleads with them to seek companions they can be sealed to in the temple. He promises them that making that choice will make all the difference in their lives.
Wow.
It's about prioritizing eternal relationships, building a foundation
Right.
that will last forever.
So it's not just about finding someone you love
Right.
in this life. It's about finding someone you can build an eternal partnership with.
Absolutely. And he also speaks directly to those who might be married
Okay.
but haven't yet been sealed.
What message does he have for them?
He pleads with them to prioritize making that happen.
Mhm.
He reminds them that simply wanting to be together forever isn't enough. It requires action.
Right.
It's about making a conscious commitment to solidify those eternal bonds.
It's about turning that desire into a reality.
Yeah.
And what about those who are single and hoping to be married someday?
Yeah.
Does he address them too?
He does. He encourages them not to wait for marriage to receive their endowment
Okay.
in the temple. He
Right.
urges them to go now,
Hmm.
to prepare themselves spiritually, to learn and experience the power of those covenants. It's about taking ownership of their spiritual journey,
Yeah.
regardless of their relationship status.
So it's about proactively seeking those blessings and preparing for those eternal possibilities.
Exactly. And it's all about building that solid foundation,
Yeah.
brick by brick, covenant by covenant.
It's incredible how much wisdom he packs into these messages about family.
It is.
It's clear that eternal families are at the very heart of God's plan for our happiness.
They are. And President Nelson wants us to grasp the immense power and significance of those sealing covenants. They're not just rituals.
Right.
They're keys to unlocking eternal joy and connection.
It's a beautiful vision of love and unity that extends beyond the limitations of this life.
It is. And it all circles back to that foundation we've been talking about. When our foundation is built on Jesus Christ
Right.
and reinforced through those temple covenants, including sealing,
Right.
we have the power to create lasting joy and happiness, not just for ourselves,
Yeah.
but for generations to come.
Wow, I'm feeling so inspired.
Me too.
This deep dive has been eye-opening.
We've only just scratched the surface of all the wisdom in President Nelson's talk.
Right.
But I think we've unearthed some pretty valuable nuggets.
We have. We've talked about the importance of a Christ-centered foundation, the significance of temple covenants,
Yeah.
and the power of sealing families for eternity.
And most importantly, we've explored how these principles can help us navigate the challenges of life
Yes.
and find lasting peace and happiness.
It's so much more than just a set of rules or rituals.
It is.
It's a blueprint for a truly meaningful life.
It is. And before we move on, I want to share one more powerful quote from President Nelson.
Oh, I'm all ears.
That really resonated with me.
Okay.
He says, "Whenever any kind of upheaval occurs in your life, the safest place to be spiritually is living inside your temple covenants."
Wow, that's a powerful image.
It is.
It's like our covenants become our spiritual fortress, our shield of protection against the storms of life.
Exactly. No matter what chaos is swirling around us, we can find safety and peace within the walls of those promises we've made.
Yeah.
It's a refuge unlike any other.
So even amidst uncertainty and turmoil, we can find solace and strength in our covenants.
Yes.
It's such a reassuring thought.
It is. And it brings us to a crucial question.
Okay.
What does it actually look like to live inside our covenants?
Right.
How do we make them more than just words we've spoken?
That's such a thought-provoking question.
Right.
It's easy to say we're going to live our covenants, but what does that actually look like, day to day?
I think it boils down to making those promises like a guiding force in our decisions,
Right.
our actions, even our thoughts. It's about letting those principles shape, who we are, how
Yeah.
we interact with others, and
Yeah.
how we approach the world.
President Nelson also talks about the temple as a place of revelation, a place where we can receive guidance and answers to our questions. He suggests we go to the temple with a seeking mind. What does that look like in practice? What kind of revelation can we expect?
It's not always a lightning bolt moment,
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes it's a quiet whisper, a subtle nudge in the right direction. It might be a new insight into a scripture passage,
Right.
a feeling of peace about a difficult decision, or even a sudden burst of inspiration
Yeah.
that helps you see a problem in a new light.
So it's about being receptive,
Yeah,
paying attention to those subtle promptings.
absolutely. And the temple, with its peaceful atmosphere and focus on eternal truths,
Right.
creates the perfect environment for that kind of spiritual receptivity. It's like tuning our spiritual radio
Okay.
to a clearer frequency.
And President Nelson encourages us to cultivate that seeking mindset even when we can't physically be in the temple, right?
Yes. He reminds us that we can rehearse in our minds the covenants we have made. It's about keeping those promises alive in our thoughts, creating a mental space
Right.
where the Spirit can continue to teach and guide us.
So it's like carrying that temple feeling with us wherever we go.
Yeah.
It's about making those covenants a part of our internal landscape.
Precisely. And that brings us back to President Nelson's central message, building a spiritual foundation that can withstand any storm.
So as we near the end of this deep dive, let's recap.
Yeah.
What are the key components of that unshakable foundation?
Well, it all starts with faith in Jesus Christ.
Right.
He is the bedrock, the cornerstone of
Right.
our spiritual strength.
And we build upon that foundation through temple covenants,
Exactly.
those sacred promises that connect us to God and guide our path.
Those covenants become the framework, the supporting beams of our spiritual structure.
And we reinforce those beams
Uh-huh.
through consistent effort, through daily practices like prayer, scripture study, service,
Right.
and of course, temple attendance.
Right. Those actions become the mortar, binding everything together and making our foundation strong and resilient.
And it's an ongoing process.
It is.
A lifelong journey of learning, growing, and drawing closer to Christ. It's not a one-time event.
Yep.
It's a continual striving.
It is. And as we engage in that process, we unlock the incredible power of those covenants.
Right.
They become more than just words. They become the guiding principles of our lives.
So if you had to boil down President Nelson's message to one key takeaway, what would it be?
It's that sense of hope and empowerment he offers.
Yeah.
He's saying that no matter what challenges we face, no matter how turbulent the world around us becomes,
Right.
we can find peace and strength in a foundation built on Jesus Christ and fortified through temple covenants.
Yeah.
It's a message that can truly change our lives.
Beautifully said. And as President Nelson reminds us, when our foundation is firm, we have no need to fear.
Exactly. That's the ultimate message of hope. When we're anchored to Christ and connected to him through covenants, we can face any storm with courage and confidence.
Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible deep dive. I know I've learned so much, and I hope our listeners have too.
It's been my pleasure.
I always love exploring these profound principles with you.
Me too.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to keep seeking, keep learning, and keep building that unshakable spiritual foundation. Until next time, take care.